Hello, Paperback Writer here. I'm new to making videos, so please excuse the lack of, let's call it quality, but let's get right into it. I recently made a post on Reddit about Terry Goodkind's Sword of Truth series, and I was flooded with 2,000 karma points, and most of the comments were people just bashing the series and ripping the author to shreds. Did some research and found out that Mr. Goodkind is not that well liked in the literary community. When I first started reading the series, I did some research about it and was asking, "Hey, I'm kind of enjoying the series. What's going on?" And they say, "Oh, it just evolves into BDSM and libertarian rantings." And I'll be honest, that grabbed my curiosity, so I kept reading them. And for a while, I enjoyed them. And then I got to book 4, which had one of the most uncomfortable scenes of prose that I have ever read. It took me 4 times to get through like 3 pages. And it wasn't even that graphic. It was pretty graphic, but not like insanely graphic. But the emotions felt by the characters and transmitted to me, the reader, just were so awful and wrong. And I'll be honest, I didn't even finish the book. I put it down after this scene. This is the story of how I rage quit the Sword of Truth series. I'm going to summarize the first 3 books, and I'm going to skip a lot of details. I will say I did enjoy these first 3 books. I'm going to summarize their plot, and I'm going to try to be brief about it. Book 1, Wizard's First Rule. Between Game of Thrones and Star Wars, I was sick of subversion. All I wanted was just a good guy to kill a bad guy and marry a princess, for lack of a better analogy. And the bad guy Wizard's First Rule is what grabbed me. The plot involves Richard Cypher, a humble woods guide, and Kaelin, a confessor, the last of an ancient order of women with the power to touch someone and make them instantly and irreversibly fall in love with them. Total mind slave love. And now the power is controlled. It's not Rogue from the X-Men rules. She can touch people, and this is where the drama for the relationship comes in. Is that in the throes of passion, if the 2 leads hooked up, she would accidentally activate her power and destroy Richard's mind. Now, this sounds like a really broken ability, but anytime it could really come in handy, Goodkind throws a random plot contrivance that shuts the powers off at the worst possible times. They make it clear immediately that her powers will not work on the villain. Said villain is Dark and Raw. If you like dark satanic magic in your villains, this is your guy. He does some messed up stuff in the book, like burying an 8-year-old boy up to his neck in sand and then pouring molten lead down his throat. Not even kidding. That's what he does. That's our introduction to him. He is bad news. And I think it's good sometimes to have an unquestionably evil villain. It makes you want the hero to beat them all the more. Dark and Ral is trying to find the 3 boxes of Orden. If you collect all 3, you get the choice to open one of them. One box will kill you instantly, another box will make you God, and the 3rd box will destroy all life on Earth. Dark and Ral is trying to figure out which box he needs to open once he has all 3, but he's not above rolling the dice and picking one at random. There's also Zed, the wizard, and not at all Obi-Wan Kenobi of the story. People say Goodkind rips off a lot of people, and I'll say that there is a fine line between a trope and blatant plagiarism. That said, Smeagol from Lord of the Rings is in this. It's Smeagol. It's not even a contest. It's Smeagol. But his name is Samuel, so I guess that makes it okay. The best part of the book, I would say, is right before the ending. For about 50 pages, Richard gets captured and is subjected to some of the most gruesome torture at the hands of a kinky leather mama dominatrix named Deanna. This was some brutal stuff. It was hard to get through. You really feel bad for him and want to see him get out of it. He does get out of it, and Dark and Rahl forces Kalan to use her power on Richard, and under the control of the Confessor magic, he forces her to ask him which box he needs to open. Richard tells him the wrong one. Rahl opens it, and he dies. Kalan is stunned because Richard is supposed to follow her every command, and we get the line that really grabbed me into this series. I love you so much, no magic could make me love you more. It's corny. It's sappy. but it made me happy. I liked it. Whatever. Book 2, Stone of Tears. This is probably the best book of the series. The ghost of Darkenral is working from the underworld to bring the keeper of the underworld, the world's version of the devil, into the material plane. It also introduces the Imperial Order. These are the arch villains of the series, and in not so subtle terms, they're fantasy communism. They want to take over the world, redistribute all the wealth, eliminate all magic. This is where the libertarian rantings come in. It actually, whenever they're comparing the order to something, it's like, yeah, you're just bashing on communism. Which should be bashed on, if I'm going to be honest. So, that's cool. Richard and Kalan are separated most of the book. Kalan leads what's left of the New World's soldiers against the Imperial Order, as Richard has to go to wizard school. He even gets an invisibility cloak. No joke. Just saying, though, this was published before Harry Potter. By the way, Darkenral is Richard's father, and Richard has inherited magic from him, hence needing wizard school. This is a long book. A lot happens, has some really good ideas, and the climax was amazing. The country's leadership is taken over by the Imperial Order, and they sentence Kalan to death. Richard stops the ghost of Darkenral and hears about the execution. It takes 2 weeks to get to her, and she's going to be killed in 2 days. So Richard just grabs a horse, rides it to exhaustion, doesn't stop, doesn't sleep, doesn't eat. When a horse dies, he just steals the nearest one and keeps going. He gets there, finds out he's too late, Kalan has been executed, so he just draws the sword of truth and kills literally everyone responsible for this. Don't worry though, she didn't die. They faked her execution. How did they fake her execution? Well, a wizard did it. Book 3, Blood of the Fold. This is where we get introduced to the Imperial Order's leader, the Emperor Jangang. He is a dream walker. He has the power to walk into people's dreams and control them to do his bidding. Now, Richard stands as the greatest hope against him because when he killed Darkenral and he inherited this ability where if you swear loyalty to Richard, you are immune to the touch of the Dreamwalker. So the series becomes a game of who can take over the world first. And to Goodkind's credit, I was surprised by how tyrannical of a takeover this is on Richard's part. He just goes to kingdoms and kicks down doors and says, swear loyalty to me or you're done. You're with me or you are the enemy. The Emperor enlists the Blood of the Fold, a tyrannical, fanatical, anti-magic order to invade the New World. I'm skipping so much, but there's a huge battle. Monsters, soldiers, wizards, magic, everything. It was, in all honesty, awesome. This brings us to Book 4, Temple of the Winds. Now, I've been skipping a lot of plot, but here's something important. This was one of the reasons I kept wanting to read the series. Richard is this crazy powerful wizard now, and Kalan has the power of a confessor. All confessors are women. However, the confessor power is passed down to a confessor's children, female and male alike. Male confessors are a big problem, because a man with that kind of power will abuse the crap out of it. So when a confessor has a male child, the confessor's mate, who in every other situation is an unquestioning love slave to her, obeys her command and kills the baby right away. There is this sorceress who does not like the idea of Kalan and Richard being together, because if they have a son who will have confessor power, crazy magic from Richard's family, and he would grow up to be the most powerful, unstoppable force in the world. So there was some tension there, which gets totally crapped on later. If they get married and have a boy, it's going to end badly. So the sorceress, Shota, brings a childhood friend of Richard's named Nadine into the mix to try to have her seduce Richard. And here's Nadine's backstory. This is a little vulgar. She was in love with Richard when they were teenagers, and she came up with this plan where she would hook up with Richard's brother. By the way, Richard had a brother. He turned out to be evil, killed in the first book. She hooked up with Richard's brother and arranged it so Richard would walk in on them in a certain state of affairs. And her plan, her words, not mine. Her plan was Richard would be so overcome with jealousy and anger that he would mount her himself and make her his. Her words, not mine. So that's Nadine. There's also Dufran. And Dufran is Richard's long-lost half-brother from Dark and Raoul. And he's a healer. He doesn't have magic himself. And he seems to be a good guy. And totally not at all evil the whole time. And the plot of the book is about the Emperor releases the bubonic plague into the world. Now, the only way to stop the plague is to find the Temple of the Winds. And the only way to enter the temple, because it's guarded by magic, is to betray your truest conviction. The idea being that by betraying your truest conviction, you'll lose motivation to get whatever you were going into the temple to get, which I thought was, honestly, again, to Goodkind's credit, that's a very unique security measure. I mean, it makes you think, how are they going to get in if they got to betray their truest conviction? And for Richard and Caitlin, their truest conviction is, of course, their love for each other. I want to apologize for how uncomfortable I might make you now. To summarize, they found out the only way they can enter is if they marry other people, Nadine and Dufran respectively. And their marriages must be consummated. And they can never be together again. So I'm reading this thinking, there's a way out. There has to be. And there isn't. It happens. Not too graphic of a scene. A little graphic, not too graphic. But we see Caitlin do what needs to be done. And the conflict in her and just the hatred for what's happening to her in this moment is so palpable. She feels so violated and dirty. And I swear, when I got through it, I had to take a shower. And after I took that shower, I proceeded to Wikipedia how it all ended. Basically, some of Richard's bodyguards, who are more of those kinky S&M dominatrixes, they switched Richard and Dufran when they were in a dark part of the cave and no one could see. So Kalan actually consummated a marriage to Richard. And then, meanwhile, when Nadine found out she was tricked into sleeping with a total stranger, that's not messed up at all. She just threw herself off the mountain and killed herself. But since the intent of Kalan betraying her conviction was done, that somehow opens the temple. Richard goes in, cures the plague, comes out. By the way, Dufran, he was murdering prostitutes this whole time. So Richard chops his head off, and then they get married and live happily ever after until book 5. I don't know if I'll ever read book 5. I do own it. I bought it when I was getting near the end of book 4, and I was excited for it. But the reason I want to make this video is because as much as I hated what happened at the end of this book, I think there is something to be said about a book or story getting that kind of visceral, emotional reaction out of you. That's why we read. We want emotional reactions. Unfortunately, even though this book gave me a powerful reaction, it wasn't one I enjoyed. So as much as I did like this series, for all its flaws and all, I'm pretty much done with it. Okay, if you liked my video, I'm making these videos to try to promote my own books. I write many genres. I have fantasy books. I have crime books. I have a gothic horror book. They're all pretty short, not too long. They're not like 900-page door stoppers. And I'm growing as a writer. I'm not saying they're fantastic, but I think I worked hard on them, and I think they're pretty unique. So go to dimestorepublishing.com, and you can get my books. They are all free if you have Kindle Unlimited, all my books are free. And if you go to my Patreon, patreon.com/dimestore, you can get a bonus little story for just a patronage of $1, and I'll keep making videos and keep pumping out stories and works, and I hope to see you again. So subscribe, hit the bell, and you'll get some fun content from me.